And welcome back. It's Frankie Boyer. There is a film that Jennifer Aniston is starring in and actually was not nominated for the Academy Award. Many feel she should have been, but she was nominated for the SAG and for also the Golden Globe. And it's called Cake. It's about drug addiction. And what makes this such a sad story and what makes this story so appealing to so many is that it could happen to any one of us. Kyle Simon is with us, the Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Center for Lawful Access. And Kyle, welcome. So this is a very this movie is going to do a lot because we're talking about it. That's the number one thing, and we're talking about prescription drug abuse in this country, which is rampant, and it's scary and it's frightening.
You're absolutely right, and thank you for having me, Frankie, to talk about this. That's the key thing, is that we hope this movie does create that dialogue, because the U.S. is in the midst of a prescription drug abuse epidemic. There were more than 22,000 Americans who died of prescription drug-related overdoses in 2012 alone. So what it really does, this movie, is
I think it's more. I personally think it's more than that, because I just know it is.
Well, what the movie does show, and the numbers, there are other, whether they're related to prescription drugs themselves or other medications, there's also illicit drugs on top of that. But it's definitely an epidemic that affects everybody. It does not discriminate based on age, gender, or ethnicity. It doesn't make a difference. It's something we have to address, though, and this movie is a good catalyst for starting that conversation.
It's such another complicated story. How do you even regulate? And how do you, my frustration is that there are people in my state, in Massachusetts, that are getting a prescription for Oxy they're getting $500 a month because they have cancer. They're not using all of them. They're selling them. You hear about this abuse all the time.
Right. And that's exactly it, too, is that, the work of CLAD and our partners, we work at the state level to implement safer prescribing standards so that we're educating physicians about how to appropriately treat pain so that people are using these medications and they're obtaining them safely and effectively. And some of the stuff that's happened, for instance, in Massachusetts, I know lawmakers have responded by requiring that Medicaid actually require abuse deterrent medication. So when you mention oxycodone, there are these types of products already on the market that are harder to crush, harder to inject, and therefore will reduce these overdose deaths. And Massachusetts has responded to that. And a lot of states have implemented safer prescribing standards. 49 out of 50 states have prescription monitoring programs so that they can track when someone gets these medications, from which physician, where they get them dispensed, from which pharmacist. So we're putting controls in place that will reduce this prescription drug abuse epidemic that we're in the midst of.
So if someone is listening to this and they know of someone or are concerned about becoming addicted, what do you recommend?
Well, addiction treatment is critical. So making sure that the physician really, it's important that these people have frequent visits to their doctor, that they're thoroughly communicating, how they're taking these medications, they're taking proper dosages, and that they're also safely storing and disposing of them when they're finished with them. A lot of times people will leave them in their medicine cabinets. Grandparents will do that, not think about their grandkids taking them, thinking they're, just some headache medicine, or swiping them and using them in a negative way, and that's all too common. So there's really nothing you can do to point to it, but physicians can do things like urine drug testing to see if they're taking too many or if they're diverting them and not taking enough. So there are things that can be done.
Do you see the changes happening with the legalization of medical marijuana and maybe getting some of the people off the opiates and the opioids?
Well, that's a tricky situation just because, marijuana is a level 1 controlled substance. According to the FDA, it has no medical use.
Oh, let me rephrase that. Okay, wait. Let me rephrase that. People using CBD, which is a non-high version of the hemp oil.
I actually don't know the relationship between the two, but I have seen the scourge of heroin abuse because there has been that evolution of the epidemic of prescription drug abuse to illicit drugs. And even in this movie, Jennifer Aniston goes to illegal marijuana to basically try to treat her pain. So there is a lot of that happening as well. So this is growing, but the work of CLAD is to make sure that we implement policies in the states that are balanced and sympathetic toward people who have pain.
Right. And from what I've been told, the hemp oil, not the part that gets you high, but just the oil extracted from the plant, the cannabinoids, just the hemp seeds themselves that are pressed are having tremendous effect with pain.
Yeah, and I don't know much about that, but I do know there are other modalities that we can look to treat pain. It doesn't need to be only opioids. There are different types of therapies, physical therapy even, that can treat this. So it needs to be a more holistic view rather than where in Florida, for instance, there were 1,000 pain clinics, I believe, up until they implemented a prescription monitoring program there. And now a lot of these clinics that were just giving out medications that people didn't necessarily need or didn't need long term have gone away. So there are other things that we can do. Absolutely.
I think that there has to be more monitoring. I think, physicians need to own up and be responsible. I think that that holistic approach is what I'm all about. I think that we need to have more conversations about the hemp oil being used topically, internally for pain, meditation, guided meditations, however, nutraceuticals, however we can get people to be pain-free is what it's all about.
Absolutely, and that points to the fact that the Institute of Medicine finds that there are 100 million Americans, or 1 in 3 adults, that actually has chronic pain, that suffers from chronic pain. And a very interesting study that came out from the Fibromyalgia Organization, the national group, showed that when people who are having these, chronic illnesses do not have access to these medications, they oftentimes contemplate suicide, up as many as 40%.
It's really devastating. What's the best website, Kyle, please?
Yeah, check out clad.org, CLAAD.org, and look at lockyourmeds.org to make sure people are safely storing medication.
Thank you so much for being with us and sharing this information. It's Frankie Boyer for Biz Talk Radio. Make it a great day, everybody, and smile. We'll see you next time.